All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. And today we're going deep, deep down to the foundations of research itself, ontology and epistemology.
Ooh, sounds heavy.
Yeah, it might sound a bit intimidating at first, but honestly, these concepts are so fascinating and they really make you think differently about research and even just like how we understand the world around us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll be diving into ontology and epistemology, foundations of research for this one, which lays it all out there.
Yeah.
And our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to figure out how these different ideas about like reality and knowledge actually play out in the research process.
Sounds like a plan.
So let's start with ontology. It's all about like what is, right? What is reality really? I mean, is it something out there that's fixed and measurable, or is it more fluid, like something we're constantly shaping and constructing through our own experiences? It's a bit mind-bending when you really stop to think about it.
Right, like how can two people witness the same event and come away with totally different interpretations?
Exactly.
Well, the source material talks about how different researchers actually approach this question of reality in a bunch of different ways, and that's where ontology comes in. It's the study of being, of what actually exists.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
So some researchers, they're called objectivists, and they believe that reality is kind of like set in stone, measurable, objective.
Makes sense.
Yeah, think of like scientists who are studying the human genome. They're looking for those concrete, objective data points.
Right, right. But then I can also see how, like in other fields, reality might be seen as way more like subjective and constructed, like how different cultures might interpret, say, historical events.
Exactly, and that's where constructivism comes in. It's the idea that our realities are actually shaped by, our experiences, our cultures, our interactions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and the source even mentions different types of constructivism. Like, there's social constructivism, which focuses on how our social interactions shape our knowledge and understanding.
Huh. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your ontological perspective, like whether you're an objectivist or constructivist, could really impact like the research questions you even ask, not to mention the methods you use to answer them.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. You totally hit the nail on the head there. The source gives this example of a researcher studying climate change. Like an objectivist researcher might focus mainly on measurable data, right? Like temperature records, carbon emissions.
Right.
But a constructivist researcher, on the other hand, might be more interested in how different communities are actually experiencing and adapting to climate change. They might use like interviews or focus groups to understand those lived experiences.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's so interesting to see how these like really fundamental ideas about reality can have such a huge impact on research.
Okay, so we've tackled ontology, the whole what is question, but now let's move on to epistemology, which is all about how we know about this reality, right? But the thing is, there are so many ways that we gain knowledge, like through observation, through experience, through logic, even intuition sometimes. So how do we actually determine what counts as like valid knowledge?
Well, that's the big question that epistemology tries to answer. It digs into the very nature of knowledge, like how we acquire it, what justifies it.
Okay.
And just like with ontology, different researchers have different epistemological stances.
I see.
Yeah. I remember reading about empiricism, which is the idea that knowledge comes primarily from our senses, our observations.
Right, like those classic scientific experiments where they like carefully control all the variables and make observations to test a hypothesis?
Exactly. Empiricism is all about basing our knowledge on evidence that we can observe.
Gotcha.
And the article actually goes into different theories about justifying knowledge. Like there's the coherence theory, which basically says that a belief is justified if it fits in with our other beliefs, if it all hangs together logically.
Mm.
And then there's pragmatism, which emphasizes the practical usefulness of knowledge. Like if it works, it's true.
It's like that saying, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Right,
So-
exactly. Like if it works, then it's valid knowledge, at least from a pragmatic perspective.
Yeah. But what about things that are like harder to measure or observe directly?
Yeah.
Like human emotions or cultural beliefs. How does epistemology deal with those?
Well, that's where interpretivism comes in. It's all about understanding the meaning that people give to their experiences.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so interpretivists often use methods like interviews and observations to capture those, subjective experiences and interpretations.
It reminds me of like historical research, trying to piece together what happened in the past. You can have all the facts and dates, but without understanding the motivations and perspectives of the people involved, the story just feels incomplete.
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating because your ontological and epistemological views often kind of go hand in hand. Well, if you believe in a fixed objective reality, you're probably more likely to trust knowledge that comes from like empirical observation.
Right.
But if you see reality as more fluid and socially constructed, then you might put more emphasis on knowledge that comes from like shared understanding and lived experiences.
Ah, I see, I see.
They really complement each other.
So it's like a whole web of interconnected ideas.
It is.
I guess the key takeaway here is that ontology and epistemology, they're not just some abstract concepts that philosophers argue about. They actually form the underlying framework for, like, all research, influencing everything from the questions we ask to the methods we use and the conclusions we ultimately draw.
Exactly. So like the next time you're reading a research paper or even just, engaging with information in your everyday life, try to think about those underlying assumptions about reality and knowledge. It can really give you a whole new level of understanding and insight.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing the world in a whole new way. Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of unpacking these complex concepts today.
Yeah, I think so too.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. We've just scratched the surface here, and there's so much more to discover. And who knows, maybe you'll even start to question your own assumptions about reality and knowledge.
Yeah, and how those assumptions might be shaping your own understanding of the world.
That's a great thought to leave everyone with. So until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.